Today I'm so excited because I will bring you along as we prepare to celebrate Shavuot in our orthodox Sephardic Jewish family. I will share with you my easy and foolproof cheesecake recipe with all my tips and tricks to make it perfect every time. I will show you how I shape my favorite Babka recipe as a rose 2 ways in honor of Shavuot, as well as how my daughters and I shape and decorate our challah for Shavuot. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sara Malka, and on my channel I share all facets of my orthodox Sephardic Jewish life as a full-time working mom with small kiddos. So don't forget to leave this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Let me put on a pretty tichel and let's jump into it. Shavuot is part of our Shalosh Regalim, or 3 main Jewish holidays. It is celebrated for 2 days outside of Israel and for only 1 day in Israel. One of the main reasons we celebrate Shavuot is because we received on that day the 10 Commandments on Har Sinai, or Mount Sinai, and albeit it was in the middle of the desert, Mount Sinai was covered with flowers and greenery. To commemorate this miracle, we decorate our houses and the synagogues with flowers, and for me, I add as many foods shaped like flowers, or at least decorated with flowers and vibrant colors like my challah and my cheesecake. For my cheesecake recipe, I preheat the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and in my food processor, I add 15 graham crackers, and I turn them into crumbs. I sometimes use Oreo cookies or Lotus cookies. It is so delicious. I make sure to stop and scrape off the side of the bowl to avoid having big pieces of cookies in my crust. Then I add my packed brown sugar. I add my melted unsalted butter or my vegan butter if I make my cheesecake non-dairy. Then I will mix everything thoroughly. I will also try not to forget to stop the food processor often to scrape down the wall of my processor. Then I will add half a teaspoon of kosher salt to reveal all the flavors in my cheesecake. I also add my secret ingredient, a teaspoon of lemon zest, to add another dimension to my cheesecake and to help balance the sweetness of the filling, and it makes a huge difference. I mix everything again together, and I gracefully let out my anger on my mixer to make sure everything is mixed. This next tip has been a game changer for me. Instead of leaving the bottom of my spring form with the lip facing upward, I reverse the bottom of my spring form to allow an easy releasing of my cheesecake. This makes a huge difference. Then I butter the bottom and the sides of my spring form. I like to add a piece of parchment paper to the bottom of my spring form to have an even easier time to release my cheesecake. To make a made-for-measure parchment paper, I will fold 6 times my parchment paper in a triangle shape. Then I will take the center of my spring form as my guide, and I will cut my parchment paper a bit shorter than the outer edge of my spring form. And voila, I have the perfect size parchment paper. I put the paper in my mold. I close my mold, of course. And then I will add my cheesecake crust in the spring form. At this point, I want for my crust to have the consistency of wet sand because this will yield the best cheesecake crust. I firmly pack the crust using the bottom of a glass to create a crust of equal thickness throughout the spring form. For my second cheesecake, I have pushed the crumbs higher against the rim of the spring form to create a large border like a New York-style cheesecake. I put the crust in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 to 8 minutes or until golden. I take out my mixer and change my challah bowl for the cake bowl. I use my mixer with my paddle attachment, and I could also use my hand mixer, but I would only use it on low speed. To my bowl, I add my cream cheese that was at room temperature. I mix everything until there's no more lumps. Then I add my sugar and incorporate it fully to the cream cheese. I add my kosher salt, which makes everything delicious. I also add some vanilla extract. I add 5 large eggs after making sure that they are without blood spots. I add them one by one. A super tip to add eggs one by one is to use a square container. It makes everything so much easier. Once the eggs are incorporated, I will stop the mixing to avoid incorporating too much air, which would make the cheesecake crack. At this point, the batter is still quite thick. I add my sour cream to add creaminess to my amazing Shavuot cheesecake recipe. To add even more dimension to the cheesecake, I will add some lemon juice. The cheesecake mixture is now much more fluid and creates a continuous ribbon, which is what I'm looking for. The beautiful golden crust is now ready and cooled down. And before putting the filling inside the spring form, I will cover it with a triple layer of aluminum foil. I will be folding the edges first, and then creating horns that will help me to carry the cheesecake and also to make sure that the water from the water bath will not come inside. I usually add the boiling water in the roasting pan once it is in the oven to avoid carrying it with boiling water, but I wanted to show you that when I will put my springform in my roasting pan, the bottom of the springform will be covered by an inch of water, not more. I pour the filling in the crust. The filling will almost reach the top of my springform and it is perfectly fine. I smooth the top of my cheesecake, then I will bake it for 45 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, then lower the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for another 30 to 40 minutes until the top is golden. While the cheesecake is baking, I will prepare a glaze for my cheesecake and I will leave the recipe in the description box below. When I take out my cheesecake from the oven, I will put it right away on a cooling rack. At this point, my cheesecake should be wiggly in the middle, which is what I'm looking for. After 20 minutes of cooling, I use a paring knife to liberate the side of my cheesecake. It will make the unmolding and releasing of the cheesecake way more easy. Once almost cooled down, I will pour my glaze on top. I will cover my cheesecake and leave it in the fridge overnight or at least 4 hours if I'm in a rush. The next day, I will complete the decoration with fresh fruits. Here I'm using verified currants or groseilles. Before cutting my cheesecake, I put my knife in boiling water, then I wipe it dry. That will allow me to cut the perfect slices without the cheesecake filling sticking to the blade of my knife, rendering the most delicious and perfect cheesecake slice. For my amazing flower-shaped babka for Shavuot, I have already shared my amazing and decadent cinnamon and chocolate babka recipe, and I will leave the recipes in the link above and the description box below. Once the dough is ready, using a rolling pin, I will roll out my dough to form a rectangle of about 9 by 17 inches and about 1/6 of an inch in thickness. Then I will spread my filling, whether chocolate, cinnamon, or jam. Here I will be using my favorite dairy-free chocolate spread for 2 babkas and my homemade cinnamon filling for the 2 others. Whether the cinnamon, chocolate, or jam filling, I spread a generous amount of them. I make sure to leave about an inch free of filling on the sides of my dough to avoid for the filling to ooze out, and it also allows me to have an easier time rolling my babka. A pro tip I have learned is not to use the tip of my fingers to roll the dough. Instead, I use the length of my fingers to roll the babka in a log. It helps the babka to be rolled evenly and to avoid for it to stick to my fingers. Once the dough is fully shaped, I roll it a few times onto itself to even out the filling and form a straight and equal log. I pinch the ends for the filling to stay inside. For my first babka rolls, I cut my dough in the middle, making sure I leave the top uncut. I start rolling the dough from one extremity onto itself, and when I arrive at the junction, I will deepen the cut and create a soft curve, and I will continue rolling the dough onto itself. I tuck gently the end under the babka, and I place it in a round baking pan lined with parchment paper. For the second rolls, I cut the dough in the middle, leaving the top uncut. I twist the 2 extremities together, then I roll it onto itself, tucking the end under the babka. I repeat the same process with my jam filling, and I am left with this amazing babka rolls. For my challah, I have already given you my amazing and foolproof challah recipe with all my tips and tricks, including how I shop for the best ingredients to make my perfect challah every time. So I will leave the link to the recipe and the video in the description box below and in the link above. For my first rose challah, I will take about 150 grams of dough and form a log. I take my rolling pin and create a long and narrow rectangle. I cut my dough in 3, leaving about a quarter of the length uncut. I braid the bottom 3 strands, making sure that the braid stays flat. If you feel that braiding is intimidating, you can also do it with only 2 strands, twisting them around each other, making sure they stay flat. At the end of the braid, I tuck the edges as flat as I can. I roll the braid loosely onto itself. When I arrive at the end, I tuck the large tail around the head of the rose to form a leaf. I separate the petals to add more dimension to my rose, and it's ready to be baked. My daughter Leah wanted to show you how she makes her roses. She takes a long strand of dough, and with the pizza cutter, she makes little cuts in the dough. She rolls the dough onto itself. Then she separates the petals to make her rose even prettier. And voila, an easy challah rose. For my bigger challah, I love decorating them. I do my classic 6 strands challah using my daughter's song to remember how to braid my challah.
Second to the top, first in the middle. Second to the top, first in the middle.
When I have completed the braiding of my challah, I brush my challah with my egg wash. And then I place sunflower seeds on my challah to form a flower. On this challah, I added the sunflower seeds only on one side of the challah, but on the other, I added them all over. Here is how our big decorated challah looks like once baked. And here are our beautiful roses. I have to admit that I absolutely love the details of the challah roses with the petals and the leaves. I think that all our beautiful chalot will add a beautiful touch of elegance on Shavuot. Thank you for being here. It means the world to me. Know that in my book, you are a true friend. If you're here with me until the end, please write in the comments, I love Shavuot, so I know I was not alone. And if nobody told you today, know that you are loved and you are enough just the way you are. Until next time, stay safe, stay blessed, and don't forget to frum it up.